Hey, what's up guys? My name is Alex and I welcome you to another video. Many of you is asking if I can run some larger models on this laptop, like in sizes in 90 gigabytes or bigger, or something between 60 and 90. And today's video I dedicate to actually answer some of those questions and explain why you cannot run such a large models on this machine. Even I have 131 gigabytes of RAM dedicated here. So looking on the settings, just been released the version of the BIOS, and the dedicated graphics memory configuration was moved from the built-in device options. Now it's available in advanced first page. So I've got several different options from 96, 64, 32, 16, 8, 4 and 512 megabytes. Best option is to use 64 gigabytes, and in a second I will explain why. Okay guys, we are back to Windows and I've got several different screens which I will use to explain why you cannot run those large models in the memory of this laptop. I've got this now configured to have 64 gigabytes for RAM and 64 VRAM as on my previous videos, and I will now just take you through some details. We've got AWX 512 listed as a part of the instructions on this CPU, and mainboard memory is 128 gigabytes. Graphics is 8060 and we've got 64 gigabytes there as well. So yesterday there was an update for the AMD software Adrenaline edition, and I've got currently version 25.6.1, which was updated on June 6th, and today is June 7th. So I did that yesterday, and we've got the performance monitor there, and you can see the system memory allocation and GPU memory allocation. And I've got Ollama different models. I need you to actually focus the system memory and GPU memory. You will clearly see why you cannot load those large models into the memory. So let's first test, for example, one of the Ollama models. So let's try first DeepSeek R1 8B with floating point 16. Okay, so before I started, pay attention to the system memory and the GPU memory. Currently we've got 2.5 gigabytes loaded to the GPU memory and 15.6 allocated to the RAM. When I press enter, look on the system memory what happens. So GPU memory stay low and system memory went up to 20, 30 gig, 32 now, 35, over 40, 45, and it will drop in a second. Actually, looks like with this model is not dropping, so it's allocated, stays allocated to the CPU and system memory, and GPU memory is not even used. So let's say hi and see what happens. So we've got a response back, and it was in Chinese, and the important part is it was 8.86 tokens per second, and the response was provided taking that the memory for the model was actually used as a RAM, not as a GPU. And I think this is very similar with other models, and just let's try another one and you will see the difference. As a next one, we can try Gemma 3 27B. Look on the memory again. System memory 45 currently, and GPU memory is just 2.7 gigabytes used. So the system memory was dumped, and now it's loading back again, and it's 46 gigabytes allocated to the system memory, and it looks like it stays in the system memory and not the GPU memory. let's say hi. We've got 5.49 tokens per second and 5.63 tokens per second. This is a very nice model, 27B, quantization 8, and is quite smart actually. But when you look on the system memory is 45 allocated to the RAM, and GPU memory currently is just 3.6 gigabytes. And I'm actually quite surprised. I think this is something happened after the recent update, maybe to the drivers, because it looks like it's a model is allocated to the system memory and GPU memory is not used at all, almost at all. So possibly I could just make the RAM 96 gigabytes and then we will be able to load those larger modules. But let's have a look what will happen if I load, for example, the Llama 370B. Let's look on the memory, what's going to happen now. And it was previous model was released and now it's being loaded into the memory. And again, the system memory RAM is going up and now it's dropped and going up again and it's dropped, and looks like we've got the error. Llama runner process has terminated exit status, and looks like there is not enough RAM to load 70B 42 gigabytes model into the memory. But when you look on the GPU memory, it was not used at all. So as a next step, this is actually, I'm testing it the first time, so I'm very much surprised, and it's logically, it would be a good idea now to allocate to the system memory 96 gigabytes and see what's going to happen. Possibly all those larger models able to use the system memory using Ollama, and it should be possible to run them from the system memory instead of the GPU memory. But before we continue, let's have a look what happens when we use some of the models from the LM Studio. So I've got not that many models in LM Studio, but I've got, for example, GLM for 32B 0414, and let's try to load it. So 61 GPU offload, 61 layers of to the GPU. So let's see what happens. Again, the system memory is going up, and looks like LM Studio actually is using the GPU memory and the system memory is not used. So depends which software you are using, it's the memory is used a different way. So let's hide. In my next video, I will actually show some very nice tests of this GLM 432B model and what can they do and how they compare to some larger models like a 70B or bigger. I did some recent tests and I'm quite surprised how good this GLM 432B model is. So we've got 9.16 tokens per second as a response rate from GLM 432B. Let's ask another question. So let's see how fast this model is responding. And we've got 9.37 tokens per second from GLM 432B running on the Ryzen AI Max 395 CPU. Okay, let's try one more model and see what happens with the memory. I've got model that is 30.24 gigabytes, Llama 4 Scout 17B. Let's load it and see what's happened to the memory allocation. Because of those spikes, it's very difficult to use models because you still need this memory allocated to the system memory. And if there is not enough system memory, it will fail in the LM Studio to actually pass, I think, some of the data from the system memory to the GPU memory. So in this case, again, we've got the GPU memory 34 gigabytes consumed, and system memory is 16 gigabytes. But because of those spikes, if I had 96 gigabytes set to the GPU memory, there will not be enough RAM to actually load the model, so it will not work and will just fail while loading. Let's see how fast it can respond on this model. So we've got 17.5 tokens per second. So 16.8 tokens per second. So it's around 18-17 tokens per second from this model, and it looks like it's running directly from the GPU memory, and system memory is not utilized. So I will eject, and let's, as one more test, try just to confirm. So we had I've tried the Llama 370B. I will try DeepSeek R170B before I change the memory allocation in the BIOS. So looking now, we see that system memory is loading again, and looks like it's crashed, and it's trying again, but the GPU memory is not used at all. It's very interesting. It's something happened with the recent changes to the drivers that I had no yet chance to test, because those drivers just been released yesterday, and I did the update yesterday evening. So we've got the error: Llama runner process has terminated, exit status 0xC409, and the GPU memory was not even tried to be loaded, and system memory, and there was not enough RAM to actually load this 70B model. Let's try change settings in the BIOS, and we'll be back in a second. And I will change the settings from 64 gigabytes allocated to dedicated graphics memory, and I will actually decrease it because I want to use and test the Ollama, which appears to be using system RAM as a RAM and not GPU memory to load the models, and is not even increasing or touching the GPU memory. So I hope if we set, for example, memory allocation of the GPU to 16 gigabytes, I will be able to have over 100 gigabytes of RAM, and which the Ollama then will use to load those larger models and run them. And let's see what happens. Okay guys, we are back in Windows, and I've got now, when you look on the system memory allocation, I've got 112 gigabytes allocated to the system memory and just 16 gigabytes allocated to the GPU memory. And I will test now if what I've seen just a few minutes ago will work. So we've got the Ollama run DeepSeek R170B, and this is a 42 gigabytes in size model, and let's try to run it and look what's going to happen to our GPU and system memory allocation. So as I thought, looks like system memory is going up, and the GPU memory is stay as it was, as 2.5 gigabytes. So we had 20, 50, 56, and it should now stay. Okay, this is 70, 79, 80, 85, 88, 90, 94, 97. This is crazy. I'm not sure what's going on. Well, it looks like it's a 70B model currently loaded, which is 42 gigabytes in size, it's using 80 gigabytes RAM allocated system memory on this screen, and the GPU memory is not even touched. So let's run some command and see what happens there. So we've got 3.23 tokens per second. The response, when you look on the GPU utilization, is actually... So tell me a story about cars. So we've got system memory. The model 70B model is loaded to the RAM. GPU memory is not used, and the CPU is not used, but the GPU is 91% utilized, and so it looks like the system memory RAM is being used to process the model using the GPU. It's a bit strange what's going on here, but it's something that happened after the recent changes, and I'm not sure why. Maybe if you've got some idea, please let me know in the comments, and I can do some further tests. This is the first thing I see that. Let's see how fast it's gonna be, but 70B models are usually around 4.3 tokens per second when the GPU was used, and looks like this time we are using the CPU and not GPU, and there is some mismatch between GPU and CPU and memory allocation in this case, so I don't know how that affects the performance. So we've got 3.16 tokens per second response rate from 70B model, which is quite disappointing. I'm not sure what happened to the recent drivers change, or if it is the Ollama actually change. I'm not sure. This is the first time I'm testing models after the recent drivers and software changes. So when you look, we've got 98 gigabytes allocated to the RAM and just 2.9 gigabytes allocated to the GPU, and we are running the 70B model using Ollama in a terminal window. That shouldn't be possible, but this is what it is currently with the drivers and the software, and I think we will need to wait and see what's going to happen in the near future when there is more support from AMD, which seems to forgot that they should be supporting their own new hardware they are releasing. So let's stop that model. Thank you for someone who told me I can just press Ctrl and D. The system memory, the RAM, just dropped from 98 gigabytes to 15.5, which is being utilized by the operating system and apps that are running currently. So let's try now, see what's going to happen if I try to use the LM Studio, and I'm trying to use, for example, model that is 8 gigabytes in size, and just remember we've got now only 16 gigabytes allocated to the GPU. So the GPU memory gone up from 2.5 to 11, and it stays there, and the system memory, the RAM, is not being used by the LM Studio. So it looks like the Ollama and LM Studio are using different ways to load the memory, the model to the memory. So this is very interesting. It's probably more with Ollama and LM Studio than the drivers. If you can share some more idea on this, please let me know in the comments, and I can do some more tests. Just little advice is always welcome. Let's see how fast it will answer if I just ask a question and let's say hi. So we've got 20.76 tokens per second from the DeepSeek R10528. It's being the GPU memory been allocated for this model and not the system memory. System memory in this case, it stays low and it's not being touched almost at all when we load this model. So something with the software LM Studio, Ollama, maybe drivers is causing how the memory is being allocated. So I hope this answer your questions why you cannot yet use those 96 gigabytes models in size or larger models than 60 gigabytes. Basically, the software is not yet ready to do so. So in this case, potentially I could, if it's possible, to find some model that will not try to use the system memory, but only try to use the GPU memory, it will work. For example, I'm just trying to run the Qwen 332B, and we've got 16 gigabytes available for the GPU, and it's all currently being used, and it seems it's just loaded. I'm not sure how, but the system memory gone up as well from 18 to 25. So it looks like it's some of the memory was allocated to the GPU and some to the RAM. Now let's see what happens. Actually, it's interesting. Maybe this is the way. Okay, looks like this is probably the best way to do so, because I just loaded the model that is larger than the memory available, and most of it went to the GPU and excess went to the system memory. And this is interesting. Let's do one more test, and let's try the Llama 4 Scout 17B, which is a 30 gig, and let's see what happens there. Let's increase that to 14. Not sure if I should use the flash attention, but let's try. So 2.6 gigabytes available, 16 gigabytes available for the GPU, and now I'm loading this 30 gigabytes in size model. So half of it went to GPU, and looks like the larger part now is being loaded to the system memory. So it's 30 gigabytes in size model, but when you look, it's gone up to around 60. So not having this available, it will just probably fail and will not start. So yeah, so it should be, I've got 15 there. There was around 15 available for system RAM. Yeah, that seems right. Let's ask the question. It's processing problem because it's taking into account whatever we said before, but it's interesting. That's actually the interesting that allocation of the memory to RAM or system memory makes no big difference in the speed of the response. So maybe this is the way actually to test those larger models. Just assign very little to the GPU, and whatever it cannot be loaded to the GPU, it will be loaded to the system RAM. So I've got currently no large models available to test it, but let's pull one and see what happens. So I just selected the Llama 3.370B, but it's a larger model. It's a 57.89 gigabytes in size. So it will be interesting to see what's going to happen when we try to load this model. We've got only 16 gigabytes allocated to the GPU and 112 gigabytes allocated to the system memory. So it will load first 16 gigabytes to the GPU, and the rest it will use the system memory as a available space. Let's wait and see. My internet connection is not the fastest one, and it will take me 36 minutes to wait for this model to load. So while the larger model is actually being pulled from the internet, I noticed one very interesting thing. So I've been using the Vulkan Llama CPP as a default. So I'm using the beta version, and this is the what I've installed yesterday. Latest version installed and just refreshed. And just now I switched quickly to the CPU Llama CPP just to see how it will perform using the CPU, and let's see the difference actually. So I just did a quick run test, the prompt asking for the math question, and we've got the response just 4.78 tokens per second, asking the Llama 4 Scout 17B, which is 30 gig in size. So half of the memory is allocated to the GPU and half is allocated to the system memory. Let's load some other model and see what's going to happen. So let's Qwen332B, quantumization 4. I cannot offload anything to the GPU because we are using a Llama CPP and CPU to run the model. Okay, let's run, let's load, and we see the drop in memory for the GPU utilization, and system memory dropped and now is going up again, and it looks like it will stay at around 48 gigabytes. Yeah, model is already loaded. Let's ask the same question. Looks like CPU is definitely much slower to process prompts and generate tokens. So from this Qwen332B, we've got around 10 tokens per second using the GPU and using Vulkan. And at the moment I look at it, and it looks like it's probably around 4 tokens per second. Okay, I will stop it, it takes too long. But the speed is just 2.82 tokens per second response rate from the Qwen332B, and using CPU Llama CPP engine from using the LM Studio. So definitely I will switch back to the Vulkan, and this is much faster. Let's actually see. So using the just quickly switch that. So using the CPU, the memory capacity, the VRAM is not visible, and using the Vulkan, there is a VRAM available. Looks like it's a memory capacity. VRAM is 111 and RAM is 111 and VRAM is 47. So this is a bit strange because it's not correct. I don't have 150 gigabytes of RAM in this machine. It's 128, so it's running now on Vulkan. The same model, same prompt, different answer. It will not provide the same answer every time you ask for the math question, but we can stop it and see how fast it is. So 8.62 tokens per second using the Vulkan. So it's 3 times as fast compared to the CPU when it's processed by this laptop. Okay, we've got a few minutes left for the model Llama 370B, 57.8 gigabytes in size, to finish downloading from the internet. And just before we do this final test, I just want to show you once again. So we've tested 42 gigabytes Llama 370B, and it took 90 gigabytes of the system, of the RAM, using Ollama. And let's try again. So we've got the QWQ32B quantization 8, which is 34 gig, and currently we've got assigned 18 gigabytes of system memory. So if we theoretically, if we load this 34 gigabytes model into the system memory, it should consume around 52 gigabytes. But let's have a look what happens here. So the GPU memory stays low when it's loading, so 3.6 gigabytes of the GPU is being used and it's not changing at all, and the system memory is going up, and the RAM, not the graphic card's memory, and gone up to around 40, 50, and it should stop around at 52, but instead it's going up and up. So it's 67, 70, 72, 77, 80, 85. So 85 gigabytes. So it's around 30 gigabytes more than it should consume. And this is another model that does that. So 42 gigabytes consumed, around 90 something. I can't remember. We just tested it. So let's test it on a speed rate, and it's quite disappointing, and not sure why is that. So we got 4.4 tokens per second from this QWQ32B quantization 8, and this is actually dropped in speed since our last test. Okay, finally we've got this large model from the internet. We've got Llama 3.370B, 57 gigabytes, 58 gigabytes in size, and this is where I've got it from. And we've got that. So it's a quantization 6 model, so it should now theoretically run now on the LM Studio, because I expect this model now to be partially allocated to the GPU, which is now currently just 16 gigabytes allocation, and we've got 112 gigabytes available for the system RAM. So let's load it and see if it's gonna to work. So the GPU offload maximum, and we can leave that as it is. Let's try flash attention, close that. Okay, then let's see, watch and see what's going to happen. So it's loading, and the GPU is already 16 gigabytes is already used. And now let's see how much of the system memory will be consumed by this model. Model is still loading, and LM Studio, we've got 68, 69, 70, still loading. It looks like it's loaded, but if it's going to work, let's type something and see. It's nice to meet you. Okay, it looks like it's actually working. So we've got 57 gigabyte model loaded into the partially into the GPU, and 64 gigabytes is now currently used by the RAM, and as you've seen, it's gone up to 112 gig, and then it's dropped to 63. For some reason it's doing that, so I think this is the only way to load those large models using LM Studio currently. Looks like it's a software. Tell me a joke. So I got 3.12 tokens per second from the response from the Llama 3.370B quantization 6 running on AMD Ryzen AI Max Pro 395. As you see, the GPU utilization 16 gigabytes, system memory is now 63 gigabytes, and there is not much difference between. Okay, I hope this test and the way I did it answer some of your questions. I'm sure maybe some of you will have even more questions after that, because it's not all clear. I try to replicate and test models running in Ollama, LM Studio, different sizes, and to show you how the memory is being allocated on each model when it's being loaded into the memory. And looks like, from my point of view, it looks like there are either settings that I don't know how to change somewhere, or drivers that are not ready yet to use the GPU on this processor, or the software LM Studio or Ollama itself maybe it's not yet ready to run this hardware. Let me know in the comments what you think. If you want me to run some other tests, please let me know. I might not do it straight away, but I will try to address your questions, and maybe I will create another video, but it looks like we need to wait a little bit longer to get this hardware more popular and used by other manufacturers of the hardware to come up with some software solutions to actually make this CPU and GPU perform as we all expected it to. Okay guys, thank you for watching. I hope you can leave me a like and subscribe if you like the content, and I will see you in the next one. Cheers guys.